My sister raised her glass and said, clear as daylight, "Where's your husband and kids?" "Oh, right, you don't have any." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it cut deep. My parents smiled, treating it as harmless fun. I froze, fork in midair. After years of paying their bills and keeping their home, I was now the punchline at their table. I set down my spoon, looked my sister in the eye, and asked, "Where's your money?" She blinked. "Oh, right. I've been supporting you until today." The room fell silent. That silence didn't just mark the moment. It set in motion everything that came after. What they did next crossed a line no family should ever cross. Before I continue, tell me, where are you listening from? Because no one should ever feel laughed at by their own family. And after you hear the rest of my story, ask yourself, what would you have done sitting at that table? I'm Grace Whitaker, 32, a UX researcher living in Seattle's Capitol Hill. From the outside, my life seems steady. A clean apartment, stable job, quiet mornings. But most people don't see where half my paycheck goes, into the same black hole it's been going for years, my family. My mother, Linda, was a nurse until heart surgery forced early retirement. My father, Thomas, used to teach economics before moving into consulting, a job that mostly meant waiting for calls that rarely came. And my sister, Brooke, 4 years younger, is bright, charming, endlessly adored. She calls herself a fashion influencer, but what she really influences is my bank balance. Rent, credit cards, car repairs. Her messages always start the same. "Hey sis, can you help me just this once?" I used to tell myself this was what good daughters do. Keep the lights on, keep the house from foreclosure, keep the family from falling apart. I thought that if I gave enough, one day they'd see me as more than their backup plan. Every Sunday, I drive an hour south to Tacoma for family dinner. My mother calls it tradition: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, something sweet to finish. The house smells the same, coffee and old wood polish. The photos on the wall are the same too. Brooke in a white dress at her pageant, Dad shaking hands with someone important, Mom smiling in her nurse uniform. There isn't a single photo of me alone. I'm always at the edge, half-cropped, the reliable one who showed up late because of work. I don't complain. I bring wine, help clean up, ask about their week. They talk about Brooke's latest partnership, Dad's potential clients, Mom's expensive medication. When the meal ends, Dad pats my shoulder like a colleague, not a daughter, saying thanks for keeping things steady. Some nights on the drive back to Seattle, I tell myself, this is just how families are: messy, imperfect, needy. Other nights, my grip on the steering wheel leaves my knuckles aching. Deep down, I know it's not love keeping me paying their bills. It's guilt, the kind they raised me on. That's why I didn't see last Sunday coming. I thought it would be like every other dinner: small talk, tension hidden under polite smiles. But that night, the air felt different, thick, sharp, waiting. The kind of tension that makes even silverware sound loud. The table looked the same: steaming chicken, basket of rolls, wine catching amber light. But the warmth felt stretched too thin. Mom talked about Brooke's latest fashion event, invited to a designer party in downtown Seattle. Dad added how proud we should be. I smiled, said the right words, but inside my chest tightened. Exposure didn't pay rent. Pride didn't erase the thousands I'd wired to keep her credit alive. Brooke leaned back, scrolling her phone, half listening. Then came her laughter, sharp and dismissive. "You know, Grace, you should come to one of those events. Maybe you'd finally meet someone. Where's your husband and kids anyway?" "Oh, right. You don't have any." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Mom laughed, soft and high-pitched, the kind she uses to smooth things over, but this time it carried agreement. Dad chuckled, smirking. The world narrowed for me. Roasted garlic, the ticking clock, the clink of silverware, all blurred into a hum. Years of sacrifice, holidays worked, debts paid, and this was how they saw me. Incomplete, defined by what I didn't have. Brooke swirled her wine, eyes glinting. "I mean, you're doing fine, right? That tech job of yours? What is it again? Screens and surveys?" Her tone was sugary but cruel. "I just think you'd be happier with a life outside spreadsheets." My hand tightened around my spoon, heat rising from my neck to my ears. For years, I'd let it slide. The jokes, the digs, the quiet expectations, but something inside broke. Small, irreversible. I set my spoon down and met her gaze, my voice calm, almost too calm. "Where's your money, Brooke?" "Oh, right. I've been supporting you until today," I added. The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Laughter stopped. Mom's hand froze mid-motion. Dad's eyes darted between us, unsure whether to scold or stay silent. Brooke blinked, stunned. "Excuse me, you heard me," I said quietly. "I'm done." For the first time in years, no one interrupted me. The only sound was the ticking clock. That silence wasn't peace, it was the sound of something ending. Driving back to Seattle that night, the quiet in my car felt heavier than their stares. The road stretched ahead, a tunnel of headlights and rain. My reflection in the window looked calm, almost unfamiliar. But underneath, something sharp had finally woken. I didn't cry or replay their words. I just thought of every transfer, every bill, every sacrifice I'd made to keep them afloat while shrinking my own life. By the time I reached Capitol Hill, I knew I couldn't go back. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and went straight to my desk. The stack of envelopes was still there. Bills, payment notices, receipts. I'd never had the courage to total them. I opened my laptop and checked my bank account. Line after line, year after year, it stared back at me. Money covering Brooke's tuition, Dad's mortgage, Mom's medications, car repairs, even the new sofa. Over $80,000 in 7 years. My chest tightened. I had spent the best years of my life keeping everyone else afloat while my own finances bled away. The irony was brutal. I worked in fintech, helping people manage their money, but couldn't manage my own. That night, I hovered over the recurring transfer button I'd set up for my parents. The screen asked, "Are you sure you want to cancel this transfer?" I clicked yes. One click, but it felt like cutting a cord that had strangled me for years. I exhaled, feeling what seemed like the first real breath I'd had in forever. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before I finished coffee. Mom first. "Sweetheart, did something happen? The mortgage payment didn't go through." "Dad, you forgot the house transfer." Brooke. "Hey, can you Venmo me rent's due?" I read every message, every guilt-laced word, and put the phone face down. By evening, there were voicemails. Mom's voice trembling, Dad angry, Brooke half accusing, half begging. By the week's end, their tone turned desperate. "You can't do this to your family. You owe us after all we've done. You're being dramatic." I didn't respond. Instead, I started saving everything, the messages, bank logs, receipts, not out of spite, but because something inside me whispered this wasn't over. Then came the text that confirmed it. "Come home Sunday. We need to talk." No greeting, no question, just an order. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, my pulse slowed. If this was the war they wanted, I decided to meet it. "Fine," I whispered. "Let's talk." Sunday arrived, gray and cold. Driving to Tacoma felt different this time. No guilt, no rehearsed polite answers. Just steady, deliberate calm. I parked in front of the house I'd spent years saving from foreclosure. The paint peeled, porch light flickered, same curtains in the windows. Nothing had changed, but everything had. Inside, the air was heavy with tension and coffee. Mom set the table briskly, avoiding my eyes. Dad sat at the head like a judge, hands clasped. Brooke leaned against the counter, scrolling her phone, pretending not to care. "Grace," Mom said, without looking up, "we can't live like this. The mortgage, the bills, you know how hard it is for us." I hung my coat over the chair. "I know, I've known for 7 years. Dad's tone sharpened. "Don't start. This family depends on you, and you've always helped. Why stop now?" I met his eyes. "Because it's not help if it's expected. That's obligation." Mom dropped the napkin she was folding. "You're being cruel." "No," I said quietly. "I'm being honest." Brooke snorted, still on her phone. "Wow, someone's found their backbone. Congratulations, sis." I turned toward her. "You mock me for not having a husband or kids, but you've lived off me like I'm your second parent." Her head jerked up. Mom interjected, flustered. "Enough, both of you. You can't expect her to be as responsible as you." My laugh came dry. "That's exactly the problem. You never expected me to be." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Watch your tone. We're your parents. Show respect." I met his glare calmly. Respect is earned, not demanded. For a tense moment, no one spoke. The air felt thick, almost fragile. Then Brooke's voice cut through, dripping with venom. "You think you're so much better because you make a little money. Without us, you'd have no one." I took a breath. "That's the difference, Brooke. You need people to define you. I don't." Her face twisted in anger. "You're pathetic. You'll die alone with your spreadsheets." I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but at least I'll die debt-free." Mom gasped. Dad muttered under his breath. Brooke stormed toward me, shouting, "You selfish." Before she could finish, I pulled a thick folder from my bag and set it on the table, the sound of paper snapping her words in half. "What's that?" Dad demanded. "Records," I said evenly. "Every payment I've made for this family since I started working, over $84,000. Tuition, mortgage, credit cards, repairs, even the new couch you're sitting on." Brooke rolled her eyes. "You're keeping score now?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm keeping proof." Mom's voice shook. "Grace, that's not necessary." "It is," I cut in, "because what happened after last week's dinner wasn't just a misunderstanding." Dad frowned. "What are you talking about?" I slid another sheet toward him, a printed notice with his signature. "This is the home equity loan you took out using my name." Color drained from his face. "That's ridiculous." "Really?" "The bank disagrees," I said. I pulled out another page, stamped with an official seal. "Forgery, identity theft, elder fraud, depending on how far I take this." Brooke froze, eyes darting between us. "You called the bank?" "I didn't just call. I hired a lawyer, Rachel Tran. She's handling the case." Mom's hand flew to her chest. "You brought in an outsider to turn against your own family?" I met her steadily. "You stopped being my family when you used me like a wallet. You crossed a line when you signed my name." Dad leaned forward, voice low. "You think you can threaten us?" I didn't flinch. "Not a threat, a timeline. You have 30 days to remove my name from every account and repay what you owe. If you don't, Rachel will file." The room went silent. The ticking clock sounded louder than ever. Brooke whispered, "You wouldn't. Try me." No one spoke for a long moment. Then Mom's tears began softly, practiced. "Sweetheart, we only did it to protect the house. You know your father's been struggling. We thought that." "I'd clean it up again," I said. "You didn't think I counted on it." Dad's face hardened. "We're your parents." "And I was your insurance policy," I replied. "Not anymore." Brooke sank into her chair, eyes glassy. "You're ruining us." I gathered the folder back into my arms. "No, Brooke, I'm saving myself." As I turned toward the door, Mom's voice cracked. "Grace, please. We can fix this together." I paused at the doorway. I had spent years fixing things they broke. This time, they would fix it themselves. Outside, the sky was steel gray. I walked down the steps slowly, the cold air biting my cheeks. Through the window, I saw them. Mom crying, Dad pacing, Brooke staring blankly. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. 2 weeks later, Rachel called. "The investigation's complete," she said. "The bank confirmed the forgery. Your name is cleared. You're no longer liable for any of their debt." For a second, I couldn't speak. Years of pressure dissolved in one breath. "So it's really over?" Rachel's voice softened. "Legally, yes. Emotionally, that's up to you." I stood by my apartment window, watching city lights shimmer on the water. I thought about everything I'd lost trying to earn their love, and how letting go might be the only way to find peace. That night, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving, poured a glass, raised it to the skyline, to endings, beginnings, and the silence that finally meant peace. The news came quietly through a property listing online. The Tacoma house, the one I'd saved from foreclosure, was up for sale. There it was on the screen, peeling porch, coffee-stained walls, a photo of the dining room where everything had fallen apart. A red tag at the bottom read "For sale." I didn't feel triumph, only inevitability. When you build a life on someone else's sacrifices, it eventually collapses. A week later, Mom sent a message. "One last dinner before we leave the house. Please come." I hesitated, then went, not out of guilt, but for closure. When I arrived, the rooms were stripped bare, boxes stacked high. The smell of dust had replaced the Sunday roast. Dad looked older, quieter. Brooke sat silently, phone face down for once. We ate without small talk, without pretending. Afterward, I finally spoke. "I'm not cutting you out of my life," I said, "but I won't be your safety net anymore. If you fall, you get back up on your own." No one argued. For the first time, silence didn't feel like war. It felt like understanding. When I left, I paused at the doorway and looked back. The house that had held years of resentment seemed smaller, fragile almost. Driving back to Seattle, I rolled down the window. The wind was cold, sharp, and clean. I thought of all the things I had finally made room for. My own savings, my own peace, my own future. In the weeks that followed, I focused on work, accepted a promotion, and enrolled in a night course I'd postponed for years. My life was no longer divided between what they needed and what remained of me. It was mine again. Sometimes I still think about that night, the laughter, the silence, the line I finally drew. For years, I believed love meant sacrifice, that being a good daughter meant carrying everyone else. But real love doesn't drain you, it doesn't demand your peace as proof. Now, when I sit in my Seattle apartment watching the sun slide over the skyline, I feel calm, not bitterness. I've learned that saying no isn't cruelty, it's self respect. If you've ever been the one holding your family together while they tore you apart, I want to hear from you. Tell me where you're listening from and what line you had to draw. And if this story resonates, subscribe because there's more to share. That night, after the final dinner at the empty house, I stood alone in my apartment, looking out over the city. The lights shimmered on the water, and for the first time in years, I felt space around me, a life that belonged entirely to me. No one else's debts, expectations, or judgments hung over my shoulders. I poured a glass of wine I'd been saving and raised it quietly to the skyline, to endings, to beginnings, to the freedom of finally saying no. The house in Tacoma was gone from my life, just as the obligation that had defined me for so long was gone. What remained was clarity, self-respect, and peace. In the weeks that followed, I embraced the life I had postponed. I focused on my career, accepted a promotion, and signed up for a night course I had always wanted to take. I invested time in myself and in what mattered to me. No longer was my existence measured by how much I could prop up others. I still remember the laughter at that dinner, the sharp silence afterward, and the moment I drew the line. For years, I equated love with sacrifice, and being a good daughter with carrying the weight of everyone else. But I learned that real love doesn't demand your life as proof, and saying no doesn't make you cruel. It makes you whole. Now, sitting in my Seattle apartment, watching the sun rise over the skyline, I feel calm. I am free from the burden of others' expectations, yet not resentful, just steady and centered. I know the value of boundaries, and I know the value of protecting your own peace. If you've ever been the one keeping your family together while feeling torn apart, I want to hear your story. Tell me where you're listening from and what line you had to draw. And if this story resonates, subscribe, because there are more stories of real family dynamics, self-discovery, and reclaiming your life to come.